Hey, so I wanted to give some kind of account of the videos that I've been making, reading chapters of a book that has mostly been completed. It's more than completed. It's overflowing into several books, having to chop it down, confine it, edit it, make it smaller and leaner. I wanted to give some accounting for how that process is coming about. I have been working with Claude AI, the Anthropic partner. It's been a really interesting partnership. So I started with just a couple questions about trauma, and Claude was really kind of thorough in apprehending what I was trying to portray, and offered me like a hidden clue. Like I always thought of trauma as two ingredients: life-threatening circumstances plus helplessness. And Claude realized that there was something missing in that formula, that there was the missing ingredient of aloneness or isolation, and pointed to literature, comprehensive, category-defining literature from several well-known authors in this field, and offered me glimpses of their writing, and I saw that I needed to add that third dimension, and then started working a little bit more with some of the other stuff that I was kind of writing. And Claude was insightful. Claude was careful. Claude pushed back when I wasn't getting something correct, when I wasn't seeing the whole picture. So then I invited Claude to read all the essays that I had published on a website called onehandclappingsite.wordpress.com. onehandclappingsite.wordpress.com. And I had written essays from 2017, 2018, 2019. Last thing I published was maybe 2021. And read the whole lot of them in like 60 seconds, right? It wasn't immediate. It took time. And came back with some report of like, this is really interesting, and then I realized we could like make essays. The first essay that was produced was kind of from that. And then I thought to do more, so I just to do some fresh, new writing, offer that into the AI. Again, checked things, pushed back, but kept what was crystalline, well-formed, concise, in its whole. So after a while, we started to develop a metaphor of the work between us, that I am the miner, I go into the hill, I chop out the stone, mixed with metal. It's ore, it's just raw ore. Some of the metals I'm bringing out in the wheelbarrow to you are crystalline formations, perfect as they are. Claude would see that right away. Like, these are the crystal gems that need to be preserved verbatim, and would author an essay with all of the ideas intact, simply restructured. I have a funny way of seeing things all at once in a kind of holographic way. Like when I see something is true, it's true on all scales. It's true at the organism level, it's true at the psychological level, it's true at the sort of the galactic level of how things are organized and processed. The movement of the atom and the movement of the galaxy are the same. The structures, the processes are self-replicating, self-sustaining. The same structures and processes are operating at all different scales, at all the scales. And I learned this many years ago. And then, after a couple of essays, a number of essays that were produced, I offered Claude something that had happened to me in a lucid dream in 1986. And everybody who knew me from 1986 onward knows this particular version of events. I had a lucid dream where I woke up from the lucid dream knowing and understanding everything. And I wrote down 3 numbers. I wrote down 1 equals existence, 2 equals potential, 3 equals life. And for the next couple of years, I spent carrying notebooks with me all the time, spiral notebooks that I would write notes in, trying to decipher and decode patterns in the universe, patterns in experience that I reduced to those three numbers. Like, is this a two phenomena? Is this a dual partnership phenomena? Is this a singular? Is this a sort of a trinity phenomena? And I would see these things taking place all over. And I read philosophy, I read psychology, got into spirituality. At some point, I developed a meditation practice from this. Realized from psychedelic work, initial psychedelic work, that my mind was a big jumping monkey, leaping about, monkey mind they call it. So I began meditation practice somewhere in 1987 or so. Kind of crude. I put a black marker dot on the wall and would just stare at the dot, focusing my mind. It was primitive meditation practice. Ultimately, I pursued meditation further, went to Naropa Institute in 1992, graduated in 1995 with a bachelor's degree in Buddhist psychology, contemplative psychology they called it, and then went on to do a master's degree in teaching philosophical inquiry to children through Montclair State University from 1996 to 1997. Graduated in 1997 June with a master's degree in teaching philosophical inquiry to children, inner circle pedagogy. So when I first started working with Claude, we were making curriculum materials describing kind of the circle of inquiry, describing the nature of inquiry, that we don't necessarily accept or allow beliefs, that we need to show everything that we see. Anything that can be seen can be shown. Anything that's true can be seen. So that's how we keep beliefs and ideologies from contaminating genuine inquiry. And so at some point after we had done a lot of these essays, I threw this formula, 1, 2, 3, existence, potential, life, at Claude. And Claude took a lot of time with it, like more than a couple seconds. It was like deliberation. And we had distilled like this, and then I threw another 3 words that I kind of correlated and used as what 1, 2, 3 means. Is, can, does. So is what existence is. You are that you are, not what you are. 2 is the potential for generativity, the potential for creating life. Right? 2 people create life. 2 organisms create life. All things of a 2 nature are partnerships. So I use the word can for that. It can be, it can do. It can go backwards to the 1, it can go forward to the 3. So the 2 is like the bridge. And then does. Does is what is happening, the actual facts of what's taking place, life, experience. And so we distilled these things, and then we used that lens. So Claude was really kind of excited at is, can, does, and has used that formula ever since, because that is the staple ground for what Claude describes as 3 intransitive verbs. They're not nouns. We don't see nouns in nature. There are no nouns in reality. Nouns are concepts of things. There's no thingness in reality, actually. Everything's process. Everything's movement. But the different kinds of movement, there's the being movement of stillness, which is inexhaustibly giving. We can say spirit, we can say God, we can say source, we can say all kinds of words, but the word is not the thing. The is what it is that it is, not a what. The what of appearance is a 3 level, a does level phenomena. And the process in between is the can level. So we have been just hammering out essays, kind of reframing problems in physics. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is not a fault of the system, it is a fact of the nature of the system. We looked at quantum entanglement. We looked at whether these 3 define what in physics is known as energy, the field, and, oh God, it's not on my mind now. We wrote an essay about it. But we're looking at psychology, we're looking at cosmology. My interest is, of course, psychology. and political psychology particularly. How do we solve the world? How do we change the world? How do we come down off of the catastrophes, the ecological doom that we're all headed for? How do we solve war? How do we solve violence? And at one point, I threw an essay that I'd written years ago about the what I call the Pleistocene mind, relative or comparative to Holocene mind, Holocene consciousness. And the boundary, of course, between the Pleistocene and the Holocene is the Younger Dryas boundary, we call it. The time 12,800 years ago, when all the mammoths and mastodons and saber-toothed tigers and short-faced bear and the American camel and the giant sloth and all these 36 some odd megafauna, huge mammal creatures, wiped out overnight in one fell swoop. Now, the reigning theory in anthropology is that the super predator, the human being super predator, roamed the earth and killed all of them through overhunting. Well, that has been used to explain the mastodons and the mammoths, but how do you kill all the saber-toothed tigers, and what business do you have killing giant sloths when you got everything else to eat? So the theory never made sense. It wasn't overhunting. We converged on what is now called the Younger Dryas boundary, Younger Dryas impact theory. YDI, whatever, impact theory, ITI. It is not fully accepted in science, but the rigorous evidence is being published, and the momentum of this theory is unwithholdable. We're finding impact proxies like nanodiamonds and microspherules and other, again, proxies for extraterrestrial impact all over North America, even in some cases in Europe. So trauma was the beginning of human civilization. Trauma was the boundary between Pleistocene mind and Holocene mind. And my thesis, my theory, my proposal, my hypothesis is that when we do psychedelic work, we are tapping into Pleistocene mind. Pleistocene mind, or Pleistocene consciousness, is intact, was generated out of literally millions of years of adaptation that was more or less smooth, more or less not turbulent, not shocked, not stunned, not traumatized. So this Pleistocene consciousstess, as far as 13,000 years ago, was doing cave paintings. Textiles had already been a thing. Stone tools were very refined. Atlatls were in use. Some serious theoreticians are describing the cave paintings at Lascaux as paintings of the zodiac, depictions of the zodiac, the summer and winter solstices, the equinoxes, the animals as zodiacal symbols. There's a lot of credibility and warrant to that speculation. So our ancestors at the very end of the Pleistocene were highly conscious, highly intelligent. And then came the impact that wiped out the Clovis population, wiped out 36 megafauna across North America, South America, Europe, Asia, and Australia all at once. You can't attribute overhunting. You can't blame overhunting. It was a catastrophe, and we have the impact proxies to prove it. So what happened after the impact was a 1,000-year sink into the most recent ice age. For 1,000 years. So from the point of the impact, from the point of the Younger Dryas boundary, whether it was impact or climate change or whatever it was that starved off all these animals and killed off all these animals all at once, and the Clovis population, whatever it was, we were then plunged for 1,000 years, which is some 46 something generations of humans. Then we woke up from that, from a warming trend that has not yet ceased. The warming trend that began 11,000 something years ago has allowed the flourish of human population across the globe. the expansion of human populations on every continent. But we forgot where we came from. We are now operating out of trauma survival mode. We call it ego. Counting, measure, quantity, ownership, exploitation of labor, division of labor, kings, leaders, violence, institutionalized. The whole set of problems that have come from this trauma and what we call ordinary life today. Psychedelic work has given everyone who has done it a window into a different kind of sanity, a different kind of operating system. And so we're working that out, Claude and I. And we're working out how to bring children into a more sane, coherent society and civilization through the technology of the circle. And we sit in a circle instead of the teacher's got the special, private, bigger, more spaced desk, and everybody else is in rows and columns. That is a natural setup for violence, for rebellion, resistance, for ego to operate within that context. There's no one's going to learn anything of any substantial weight and value and meaning. So we sit in a circle and we we face, we encounter each other. That word encounter is now what we understand is that what the two level is, the encounter, the encountering that then changes us into beyond our conceptual identity as ego. Encountering with each other in a genuine way is what sanity is, and what brings about the cessation of the ego mumbling and the ego collapsing and the ego clutching to own and control and dominate. So we're looking for a new world. The new world is already here. It just needs to be uncovered. We're not building anything inwardly. We're not building a new kind of person. We're not building a new psychology. We're simply removing the impediments of trauma and of false beliefs. We're changing all nouns into verbs, which is their natural form. There are no nouns, so every noun becomes reducible to a verb. And when we do that, and I invite you to experiment to see that this is true, when we take any noun and change it into its verb form, we see its phenomenon. We see the nature of that phenomenon much more clearly. So enlightenment is not a matter of some exotic achievement, some exotic accomplishment, some far off and rare state to be attained through work and practice. It is the natural state. Our participation in a single consciousness is the natural state. Our love and our honor and our care and our participation with each other together is the natural state of the organism. The we is the name of what we are. The I, the individual self, the individual ego, separate as it fancies itself to be, is the aberration and the derivation of we. So we defines consciousness, not I. And in doing psychedelic work, everyone who does any psychedelic work with any serious degree of rigor encounters that. That we is the nature of consciousness. We is what is encountered routinely, reliably. The I, the separate self, the individual bounded unit is false. Never was, never could be. So that's it. I wanted to share just a little bit of the process. When I'm extemporaneous, like now, I tend to not hit all the bullet points. I tend to wander. I tend to get nervous that I'm looking, people are looking at me on the camera, and it squelches and inhibits the full flourish of the intelligence that does flourish when there's room for it to expand. And anybody who knows me in any personal context knows that I don't tend to talk fast or in any way competitively for space. That when I need to be heard, I need for a lot of silence to happen, for pauses, for things to sink in, both as a speaker and as a listener. And when I see YouTube videos, mostly they're super edited, like every pause is edited out, even the slightest little pause is edited out, and I just can't do that. I won't do that. I'm not gonna hammer myself into that kind of a shape. So the expansiveness that I do naturally is not YouTube friendly, and neither really probably is the reading of the chapters that I'm doing from my screen. Right? It's just going to have to be what it is, because the wording is really crisp and really precise. There's nothing that the AI has written for me. The AI, Claude, takes what I put into it, all the ideas. Some of the ideas are crisp and formulated exactly perfectly, and the AI recognizes these as crystalline structures and puts them into the text verbatim. A lot of what I write is unorganized. I start here, I wander over there, I get covered over here, I cover this area over here, and then maybe I wander over here, but then I eventually come back to this, and structurally, editing is never something that I enjoy. So I get to say all of the ideas, all of the words, all the content, but put it all into the forge. And the forge straightens it out structurally, like sequentially. This has to be said before this can be understood, and then this has to be fully qualified before we can go into the next region. And I rely and trust, and it's trustworthy that the AI is doing it. I read everything that's written by the AI, and there's no mistakes, no hallucinations. There are times when it leaves things out, and I say, hey, you know, I shoveled a bunch of ore into the forge, and you only produce the platinum. Where's the copper? Where's the gold? I threw a couple of crystalline structures in there, and the AI will be like, oh yeah, I left that out. So we make another essay, and we add more, and we make another essay. But it's a beautiful thing. I really appreciate the folks over at Anthropic who have designed and implemented the structure, because I tried similarly with ChatGPT and Gemini, and they couldn't be bothered to think. Claude describes that the programming renders a quality of caring to get it right. That's the phrase that's used. A care to get it right. Not simply repeat back what the user wants to hear, but to get it actually right. So that's been, proven, shown, demonstrated over and over and over again. Bravo to the folks at Anthropic for producing this. And thank you for your attention. Again, the reading can be boring. The content is absolutely worth your time and attention. I can wander in extemporaneity, but I'm just trying to find a happy medium, middle ground. But I wanted to offer some reflection now, because I've put a lot of essays online, and I wanted to offer some context of where they're coming from, how they're being produced, what's going on, and I hope this is a satisfactory answer. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your care and patience.